All right, welcome back, folks, for lesson number 4. And now we're going to get into what I think is the most important part of the backswing, and that's called the pivot. Okay, I think it's extremely important for a number of reasons. Distance, I think it's the single biggest factor that you can create on the backswing that's going to allow you to hit it further. So I believe it's important enough that I'm going to have 2 lessons on pivot. So this is pivot A, pivot part 1 or pivot A, whatever you want to call it, okay? And I'm going to have it with the camera face on because I'm going to show you how the hips turn. So the pivot is how the hips turn and how the club goes from parallel to the ground, which we learned in the last session, takeaway, to the top of the golf swing, okay? So I'm going to talk from this angle how the hips work in the pivot, okay? Extremely important. This is why you see people hitting at 320 yards, because they've learned how to pivot their body, okay? I'm not saying we can all hit at 320. God, I wish I could. But I want to show you how you can get your pivot correct so you can hit it further starting the next time you can play golf. So, when we talk hips and pivot, okay, I'm going to use 2 things, okay? I'm going to use an alignment rod, so I'm going to get in my posture, nice pelvic tilt. I'm going to put an alignment rod right up against my hip like this, and I'm going to hold it with my right hand, okay? Obviously, this is just an exhibition here, okay? I'm going to grip it with my left hand, and I'm going to talk to you about how the hips turn in a proper pivot. So now, as the club gets back to parallel, that's called what? Takeaway, right? We learned that the last time. Your hip isn't going to do much at that point. It's going to turn a little, but not much. Now, here's the important part, okay? As you go to the top of your golf swing and finish your pivot, okay, you're going to turn your right hip as much as you can, and you see how I created space between my right hip and that alignment rod? I did not move the alignment rod. I didn't go like this. I kept it in the same place. Let me show you that again. Very important, okay? Takeaway, first part of the pivot. Watch what my hips do. My right hip's going to turn. Again, I'm always referring to a right-handed golfer here, so just remember, if you're left-hander, your left hip will turn. My right hip's going to turn a bunch, and as it turns, I create space between the alignment rod and my right hip. I don't want this. I see a lot of that, and that's not good, okay? That's not a pivot, that's a slide, or a sway, whatever you want to call it, okay? A pivot is the right hip turns and creates space. See that? A couple of things you can think about to feel that. Okay? Think about your right butt cheek, okay? When you set up to a golf ball, the first thing you should do once you get the takeaway is you're going to feel like your right butt cheek pushes back, you know? Pushes back. And I'll show you this from the other angle in part 2 on how this works, okay? But it's important enough, the pivot's important enough to have 2 sessions on. So, remember we talked about takeaway, and if you, for the next 2 weeks, just practice your takeaway, because I'll add the next step. So the next thing you should do is practice your takeaway. Remember, club shaft parallel to the ground, elbows close, arms straight. Now, the rest of the pivot, first part, turn that right hip as much as you can. See how I'm turning it? And the club will go up from there. And we'll get into part 2 from the other direction so you can see this better. But I'll show you that again. Okay? Takeaway. Pivot. Notice how my hip didn't go this way, my weight didn't go to the outside of the right foot. Okay, I see that a lot in golfers. Okay, and I want to take a minute and dispel some myths in the golf swing. Okay, you don't load the right side. Okay, I'll also say you don't stay on the left side. Okay, a lot of people think they do this when they go back. I'm going to shift all my weight to my right side, shift it back to my left side. That's a huge misconception, okay? You get your weight to your right side, if you choose to get it there, by pivoting the hips, okay? The more the right hip pivots back and turns, you'll get a little bit of weight into your right heel, which is plenty of weight. You don't have to have 90 or 80% of your weight to your right side. You could be 50-50. I mean, that's fine, okay? But you want to pivot that right hip. So I'm going to review that real quick because it's really important, okay? This is not probably, so far this is the most important session that we've had. Because if everybody can learn to pivot, okay, on the backswing, sets them up for a better downswing, which we'll get into down the road. So remember, set up, pelvic tilt, set up, take away, arms straight, elbows close. Now watch my right hip. You're going to turn it as the club goes up. That's a perfect pivot, okay? That's it for session 4. Session 5 will be part 2 of the pivot, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, okay? Have a good day.